Chapter 719, Peak Gathering. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Zhang Yuochen frowned. I'm still worried. A battle of life and death is too risky. Yuochen, you must remember that when you embark on the road to practice, a journey of adventure also starts. Each superior must have experienced untold ordeals and withstood the tribulations of life and death. Those who fear death will only meet their ends quicker if they practice the Tao of the Sword. Sword Saint Xuanji smiled. I regret nothing in this life except for one thing. Zhang Yuochen asked. What is it? Sword Saint Xuanji sighed. I'm most regretful that I cannot foster someone who can pass down the legacy of sword saints. My master was a sword saint, and so were my great-grandmaster and grandmaster. The faction has been well established by the inheritance of 16 sword saints. I don't want to see it fail in my hands. Zhang Yuochen sensed that his master was unperturbed by the upcoming battle and had long made light of life and death. He was even ready for death. Can't the senior elder brother inherit your legacy? Zhang Yuochen asked. Sword Saint Xuanji shook his head. King Xiao is highly talented, but he is not cut out for practicing the Tao of the Sword. He can be a saint, but not a sword saint. How about the second and third elder brothers? Zhang Yuochen asked. Sword Saint Xuanji said, your second elder brother pursues only absolute power without paying attention to the subtlety and changes of sword technique. The realm of Sword Saint is definitely elusive to him. As for your third elder brother, he is less talented and has set his mind on something else, so he can't become a sword saint. The fourth elder brother and the fifth senior sister apprentice are geniuses too. Zhang Yuochen said. Sword Saint Xuanji shook his head again while looking Zhang Yuochen in the eye. In fact, you are the one who I think is eligible to inherit my legacy. Me? Sword Saint Xuanji nodded and said, this is why you must deliver a good performance at the Sword Technique Conference. If you can make it to the top 10, I shall have nothing to worry about by the time I fight 9 Serenity Sword Saint, and my chances of winning will be greater. Zhang Yuochen knew that his master had great expectations for him. He became determined not to let his master down no matter what happened. He would go to any lengths to enter the top 10 or even higher ranks. Zhang Yuochen decided to stay with Sword Saint Xuanji and seclude himself for refining for the next month. Here, he could concentrate all his efforts on practice and refining in the scroll world without having to worry about Saint Lady spying on him. Zhang Yuochen felt that Saint Lady's behavior was weird and that she may have begun to suspect his true identity. That was why she did things Zhang Yuochen could not comprehend. In the future, he had to be more careful around Saint Lady. Sword Saint Xuanji asked, have you met your fiancée? Zhang Yuochen nodded silently. I saw her, but she did not see me. Sword Saint Xuanji raised his brows. Are you going to withhold the truth from her forever? Master, if she knew I am still alive, she would be happy for a while, but she would live in pain for the rest of her life. Do you still think I should tell her the truth? Zhang Yuochen pulled a wry face and looked at Sword Saint Xuanji. Sword Saint Xuanji gave a long sigh. The choice is between the pain of lovers being separated by life and death or by unspoken reasons. In the first case, she will be in pain for a while, but in the second case, she will be in pain for life. I remain a lifelong stranger to love, but I agree with your choice. As long as Empress Kaiyao was alive, Zhang Yuochen could only live in the dark with his true identity buried. He could not have Huang Yanjun betray her parents and her family just for him and live the life of a fugitive with him. Only the gods would know when she and Zhang Yuochen would die a grim death with their bones nowhere to be found. Perhaps Huang Yanjun would be willing to do that. Zhang Yuochen did not want to give her such a dilemma, however. Otherwise, more innocent people would be entangled in his feud with Kaiyao. Zhang Yuochen knew that his death had rent her heart with grief. However, the pain would fade away little by little over time until it became a bitter memory. If you want to speak to her, I can help you. Sword Saint Xuanji twitched his mouth a bit to send a sound transmission to Huang Yanjun. Soon, Huang Yanjun came rushing to the lotus pool and then bowed to Sword Saint Xuanji in salute. Master, what did you call me for? Sword Saint Xuanji pointed to Zhang Yuochen and smiled. Yanjun, let me introduce an elite youth to you. This is Lin Yue, a sword genius from the Yin and Yang sect. Huang Yanchen gave Zhang Yuochen a cold look while saluting with her hands folded. "Greetings, elder brother Lin Yue." Zhang Yuochen scrutinized Huang Yanchen closely and smiled faintly. "Junior sister apprentice Yanchen, you can come to me if you run into any trouble in the Yin and Yang sect." Huang Yanchen smiled ironically. "I am afraid you can't help me with my trouble." Obviously, Huang Yanchen was referring to Zhu Yui. She did not believe that the so-called sword genius standing across her was a match for Zhu Yui. She assumed that he would be so frightened by the name that he'd flee in disgrace. She had seen many a genius like him before, so, of course, she dismissed him. Zhang Yuochen figured out what she was thinking. "How do you know that I can't lend you a hand if you don't ask?" Huang Yanchen turned her head to ignore him. Lin Yue sounded flippant and his eyes were glued on her in a manner that made her feel uncomfortable. Had it not been for her master who had invited her here to meet Lin Yue, she probably would have left already. Whenever a stranger played up to her for no reason, she would be fully alert and even become resistant to the stranger. If she knew that the man across her was Zhang Yuochen, however, she would have reacted differently. Sword Saint Xuanji said, "Yanchen, Zhang Yuochen has been dead for so long, and you should put it behind you. There are many scenic spots and historic sites in the Yin and Yang sect, including relics left by ancient saints. I have decided myself to have Lin Yue take you for a walk. When you sweep away the bitter past, only then can you see something different." Huang Yanchen was heartened. "Master, I don't want to take a walk. I just need to practice the Tao of the Sword in seclusion." Sword Saint Xuanji looked at Zhang Yuochen helplessly. Zhang Yuochen knew Huang Yanchen quite well. He said sternly, "Sword practitioners should have the courage to march forward despite setbacks. Secluding yourself in sword practice would only make your sword dull. If you ignore reality, you will get bogged down in the Tao of the Sword." He further said, "People like you only deserve to be a sword slave rather than a sword practitioner. I see that the disciples of the Sword Saint are nothing more than this. I'm really disappointed." Then, Zhang Yuochen turned to leave. When he walked past her, Zhang Yuochen looked at Huang Yanchen and pointedly showed a sardonic expression. "Wait." Huang Yanchen looked up and a chill flickered in her eyes. Zhang Yuochen's mouth twitched a bit as he stopped. Huang Yanchen snorted. "You are so proud. Come with me and I will see what you've got." Huang Yanchen left immediately after speaking. Zhang Yuochen caught up and asked, "Where are we going?" "All Empty Cliff." Huang Yanchen said. All Empty Cliff was located at the north end of Shantai City. It was a steep cliff about 3,000 meters above ravine. It was divided into the East Cliff and West Cliff. Flowing in between was a crimson river of lava, boiling and surging. The glaring fiery light reflected from the river left streaks of red light on the black stone walls. Stone ladders had been carved into the cliff walls, connecting the rock caves together. Each rock cave had a bazaar where war weapons, pills or savage beasts were sold. Monks from different influential sects in the eastern region thronged the stalls to buy rare and precious objects for their practice. Down the East Cliff was a central rock cave that was propped up by 172 stone pillars. It was so empty and broad inside that it could accommodate thousands of people. The disciples of saints and powerful families in the eastern region, as well as the gods' favored sons and daughters of suzerains, were gathered here at this time. Lots of young monks had already been milling around when Zhang Yuochen and Huang Yanchen arrived. Zhang Yuochen saw many familiar figures, including genius students from the Martial Market Bank, such as Ni Honglu, Si Xingkong, Shang Kiki, Aug Xinyan, and Luo Shuihan, and young elites from the black market, such as Purple Wind Emissary, Red Wish Emissary, and Orange Star Emissary. Geniuses from the demonic sect all donned long robes with a silver, crescent-shaped mark embroidered at the back. Mu Lingxi, who was also clad in the black silver moon robe, looked stunning. She was with other young geniuses from the demonic sect, and they seemed to be discussing something important. Disciples of saints and powerful families were gathered in threes and fives, talking about recent major events, top geniuses and talents of all fields, and about their experiences in the Tao of the Sword. Upon entering the rock caves, Zhang Yuochen released his spiritual power to carefully observe these young monks. Zhang Yuochen was surprised to find that there were 8 saintly beings, each full of overwhelming aura, and there were even several people Zhang Yuochen could not see through. It was a gathering of the top geniuses and talents of the younger generation.